Critics have not been shy about denouncing conditions for children at Customs and Border Protection holding facilities along the U.S. Mexico border.
Now! We are lifting up these stories in the hopes that you will see the light.
What we saw today was unconscionable.
But President Trump says his administration is doing a better job than Obama's.
And they're much better than they were under President Obama, by far. It's in much better shape than it ever was.
So are conditions at holding facilities better now than they were under Obama? To start, we need to understand what happens when an unaccompanied minor crosses the southern border. Everything begins with Border Patrol, which is the enforcement arm of Customs and Border Protection and is part of the Department of Homeland Security. First, unaccompanied children are apprehended by Border Patrol agents and immediately sent to a holding facility. Then, within 72 hours, they are supposed to be transferred to longer-term shelters that are run by the Office of Refugee Resettlement, which is housed in the Department of Health and Human Services. That's where unaccompanied minors stay, while officials work to reunite them with a sponsor who's already in the U.S., usually a parent, family member, or family friend. That brings us back to Trump's claim.
And they're much better than they were under President Obama, by far.
See, it's important to understand that he's referring to Border Patrol holding facilities, where children are sent when they first cross the border, and poor conditions at those facilities are nothing new.
When they become overcrowded, or when children have to be in them for longer periods of time, many things are going to go wrong.
Overcrowding and lengthy stays in CBP facilities happened under President Obama in 2014, when an influx of unaccompanied migrant children flooded the southern border.
We now have an actual humanitarian crisis on the border that only underscores the need to drop the politics and fix our immigration system once and for all.
The Obama administration faced criticism for its initial response, but corrected course by directing FEMA to coordinate aid efforts, opening up influx shelters, and creating safeguards to prevent this from happening in the future.
Their policy was in general to make sure that kids were staying in shelters for as short a period of time as possible, which is what child welfare experts also think is the best policy. What we saw the Trump administration do is something quite different. Last year, they took steps to actually slow the release of children from shelters.
If the Obama administration created a system to address this type of crisis, how did things get so bad? Border Patrol has apprehended more than 69,000 unaccompanied children since October of 2018, and HHS said it's on track to care for the largest number of unaccompanied minors in the program's history.
2 weeks ago, I briefed the media and testified in Congress that our immigration system was at the breaking point. That breaking point has arrived this week at our border.
Government data released in May of 2019 revealed that hundreds of children had been held in Border Patrol facilities for longer than the law-mandated 72 hours. In early June, federal officials announced plans to open 3 emergency shelters to house thousands of unaccompanied children. By mid-June, immigration lawyers visited a Border Patrol station in Clint, Texas, and asked a federal judge to order immediate inspections, claiming the conditions and lengths of stay violated U.S. law.
Over the last 5 years, I have spent more than 1,000 hours in immigration detention centers. Never before have I seen such degrading and inhumane conditions for children in detention as what I saw, heard, and smelled in Clint, Texas.
Immigration and health officials moved hundreds of migrant children out of Clint after these reports. DHS reported the number of unaccompanied children in Border Patrol custody dropped from nearly 2,800 on June 7th to less than 1,000 on June 25th.
They made these policy changes which really helped release a ton of children from shelters and alleviate the backlog. And so our question is, well, does that mean that this was actually really about a policy, or was it about something that they couldn't control?
Immigration lawyers point to some key differences between the way the Trump administration and previous administrations have handled the influx of migrants.
Over just the last year, there have been 7 children who have died in federal immigration custody or just after being released from federal immigration custody. And this stands in contrast to nearly a decade previously of no reported child deaths.
The Trump administration said that overcrowding at the CBP facilities was due to lack of bed space in the shelters for children run by the Office of Refugee Resettlement.
We are full right now. We are full. We do not have capacity for more of these unaccompanied children who come across the border.
But data suggests there's more to the story.
The morning that my colleagues and I arrived at Clint, a facility designed for just over 100 adults, it was holding 351 children that morning. At the same time, there were hundreds of available beds in ORR custody, where those children should have been transferred to.
Immigration attorneys and former government officials have said that Trump's immigration policies have compounded the crisis.
From the very highest levels of this administration, people have been clear that they intend to deter asylum seekers through any means necessary.
In April of 2018, DHS and HHS entered a memorandum of agreement that required the departments to share information about unaccompanied children and their potential sponsors. Critics say this policy decreased the number of sponsors coming forward because they were afraid of arrest or deportation, and fewer potential sponsors meant more children spent longer periods of time in government custody, further overwhelming the system.
The whole system depends on children who arrive at the shelters saying who their parent or relative is, and then the parent or relative being willing to come forward and say, yes, I can care for this child.
A Washington Post investigation found that this policy was implemented to intentionally deter migrant children and their parents from crossing the border.
It's clear that the highest levels of the Trump administration were talking about a memorandum of agreement, how it could be an effective deterrent against children coming across the border, but how it could also have the effect of costing hundreds of millions of dollars and creating a problem with bed capacity.
Conditions at CBP facilities were bad in 2014 under Obama, but Trump's claim that the situation is, quote, much better now is wrong. And the administration's explanation for why the crisis occurred in the first place is misleading. If there are statements you've heard politicians say that don't quite make sense at rallies, state fairs, in That One Friend's feed, let us know. Send us a note or a tweet with what they said and your question. We'll check it out. You can follow along by subscribing to the Post YouTube channel and watching more Fact Checker videos here.